right, 99.9 Punk World Radio FM. You guys already know what time it is. And right here, we are actually joined by the co-founder and former guitarist of the iconic godfather of pop punk. That's right, we got Steve Klein of Newfound Glory right here on the radio station airwaves. Steve, how are you actually doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Hey man, you're most certainly welcome. Honestly, like I told you before we went live, super huge fan of everything you've done for the pop punk, just for the pop punk community, man. So thank you so much for a bit of your time. Like it wasn't, you are one of the individuals that literally sparked an entire genre of music, man. That inspired so many individuals, man. So honestly, it's definitely an honor.
Well, thanks for having me. Like I said, appreciate it.
But I got to take you back to December 20th of 1997, where Newfound Glory actually released their debut album titled It's All About the Girls. I was wondering if you can tell us a bit more about that album, and of course, like, how did Fiddler Records actually come across you guys, and of course, put this album out?
Okay, I'm gonna have to dig deep for this, but I'll try to do as much as I can. So Newfound Glory was playing local shows at that time, and there was a record label around that was putting out like bands, from Miami, Fiddler Records. She was putting out this band called Vacant Andes, which was actually Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional's first band. And we originally, I think, were going to do a split with like either Vacant Andes or this other band. And she approached us, and we it was kind of like, oh, we want to put up, she heard the songs that we were kind of working on. We made demos of, and then she just like Amy Fiddler, was like, hey, I want to put out like a single or two, and then we decided just to do an EP. So it's we actually recorded it with what was his name, Jeremy. He did like a bunch of the Dashboard. He actually became like a bigger producer and stuff after that. James Wisner.
Yeah,
I think it was James Wisner. Sorry. And he ended up doing like Further Scenes Forever and Dashboard Confessional and like a bunch of really cool stuff. But we recorded in his like apartment with like when he was just starting out. So yeah, that's what I remember of that.
I gotta say, definitely an amazing album as well. And I honestly, as we spoke about briefly, at the very beginning, this was the album that really actually sparked the genre as well, man. It's very hard to actually come across a copy of that album. I looked on Discogs, and they want like hundreds of dollars for it, man. It's ridiculous.
I actually just found a copy of that I posted on my Instagram like a couple months ago. It's actually the original one, like with the blue, the blue CD and stuff. It's kind of cool to like look at it now and be like, wow, that was, it's so old, and the first thing that we actually put out. It's kind of crazy.
And it's actually cool that you have a copy of that, because a lot of the artists that actually create the stuff don't even have copies of their own music. So it's really cool to know that you actually have the debut album that you were a part of.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have like this like demo tape that we had even before that came out. We like made a demo tape of a couple of the songs that were off the EP that I actually have a picture of on my Instagram too. But yeah, it's kind of, I kept a lot of stuff like the first pin. I have all like the first flyers, and like I kept all the lyric books and stuff like that. So I definitely have some like cool stuff lying around, that'll be nice to show all the people later on.
And also as well, June 17th of 2000, you guys actually released the iconic song titled Hit or Miss that actually has not one but two separate music videos. The one with you guys in the hotel room, which is the most known one, and then the other one is actually the Drive-Thru Records edition that features Corey Feldman. I was wondering if you could actually tell us a story not only behind the song, but also what actually made you guys decide to do two separate music videos. Was it your decision, or was it the labels?
Well, the first time the song was released, Hit or Miss, like we were just on Drive-Thru Records. Like it was right when the record came out. It was like, it was kind of like before everything started coming, like people started caring about Newfound Glory. And then once like that record came out, people started like, the label, like MCA Records had a deal with Drive-Thru Records, like a distribution deal, that if like the band sold a certain amount or was doing, sold amount of records, that they would get bumped up to the next, level, which was MCA Records. So once the album got bumped up is when they asked us to do another video and to like, solicit to radio and stuff like that. So it was kind of like two different releases where one, it was like on Drive Through Records. And then once it got picked up, they made us do, they didn't make us do, we kind of like wanted to do something a little bit more professional because the other one was more like a shotgun music video, super cheap done. But, and the next one was kind of like, you know, someone we did more expensive with the label and stuff like that with like actors and our first like big budget video, you know? So yeah. And it was kind of crazy because we did actually a couple different versions of that song. I remember we recorded it. Obviously the first time was on Nothing Gold Can Stay. And then we did like another version that was like with Neil Avron. And then there was another version that was done with Jerry Finn. So that was kind of cool. We got different versions of the song, but we ended up using the Neil Avron version as like the main, you know, because I also think, if I remember correctly, that original Hit or Miss that was with Corey Feldman was a different recording. So then it was re-recorded on the next record as like a single. But, you know, if I remember correctly.
You actually are right, because I remember actually if you go back and watch the Drive Through Records, this music video, the song is slightly different. It sounds more like a demo version of Hit and Miss.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of like, it sounds polished, but not as polished as the MCA version.
There you go. So yeah, now as everything's starting to like go in my mind, yeah, that's exactly how it went.
And also, when you mentioned Jerry Finn as well, I gotta say, like, definitely rest in peace to him, man. Literally one of the best producers to ever do it just for pop punk, man.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite producers of all time.
And also, as well, New Found Glory was also a part of Blink-182's Take Off Your Pants and Jacket tour that actually started July 4th of 2001, and of course, ended September 21st, 2001. I was wondering, what was it like just touring with Mark, Tom, and Travis during that time? And of course, what is one of your most fondest memories that you actually recall of that particular tour?
Oh man, it's a lot, because like that was kind of like a lot. New Found Glory, like Mark was a huge fan of New Found Glory, came to one of our shows and like picked us up and like wanted to take us on tour and said we were one of his favorite records that came out of that year, and hooked us up with their manager Rick DeVoe, and they were like, you know, we were getting bumped up to MCA and they were also on MCA, so it was kind of crazy working in tandem with them. And then obviously them taking us on tour was obviously insane. It's like one of my favorite bands growing up, and then they're like, yeah, we love you guys and we want to take you on tour, and it was super surreal. Like they were, you know, it's crazy like meeting them and being on tour with them. They're super down to earth, super fun guys to hang out with. They put on an amazing show, and super, I don't know, thinking about it now, it definitely seems like a very surreal that actually happened. Every night singing with the fuck sign was crazy. So for their new tour that actually just happened, I went and saw them live, and I literally was saying to myself, I really hope they bring back the Flaming Fuck. Like, I've always wanted to see that live, but unfortunately, Travis didn't want to haul that out of his house, but I don't blame him either. Does he actually have it at his house? Like in his backyard?
I saw a video actually on I think it was like Facebook or his Instagram, where actually it looked like in his background he actually had like the Flaming Fuck like kind of like in his home studio. I could be wrong. It could just be a museum or something, but I'm pretty sure that was his house.
Right, that's cool.
And also as well, June 11th of 2002, you guys actually released my personal favorite album titled of all time, titled Sticks and Stones. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about that album, and of course, what was it like actually working with several other members of bands? Because I know as well, Todd Morse contributed to it, Matt Skiba, Mark Hoppus did bass. Like, so many bands actually contributed to that particular record.
Yeah, what was cool is we recorded it in San Diego, and Alkaline Trio was on part of the Blink tour. So, and we were actually like doing parts of the record, Mark coming down and playing bass on it. Like, that was one of the guys in the band's like dreams, is to have Mark playing the song. So that was cool. And then just having like Dan and Matt Skiba doing backups on a couple of parts was, you know, super cool. Of course, like these are the bands that we're on tour with and bands that we look up to at the time. And like, it was crazy to have them like kind of like want to be a part of the record. And also like when the record came out, to say like, hey, like we have these really cool people on it too. So yeah, it's really awesome. Thinking about that record, it's kind of one of those things where It's hard to remember all this stuff. Gosh, you're like asking me all these things. I have to like really dig hard in my brain. But what I do remember is like being in San Diego and working with Neil Avron and just kind of like really honing in on our craft and trying to like write songs, like take it to the next level, kind of like, build upon what we already have done, but like, try to keep it the same as it was, even though we were on this bigger label and had this more, backing to it and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And one of my favorite songs on that record, man, is actually Head On Collision. Honestly, the music video was phenomenal. I believe you actually got hung upside down. Obviously, I know there's a backing track playing during the music video, so I don't think you were actually playing upside down, but just the aspect of that music video was so killer.
Yeah, we the guys from Trauma like did all like the special effects, and the band was a huge fan of like all the old like the Trauma movies that have like the cheap special effects and like the B horror style, and it was really cool that they were like did the collab with us in the video. And like I don't know, it was kind of one of those things that you don't really see that often, is like a movie studio working with a band on their music video. So we were lucky to have that. It was really cool.
And also, as well, in the year 2008, you guys actually ventured into a side project called International Superheroes of Hardcore. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about this side project. And of course, what actually made you guys decide just to venture into it originally?
I think what that was from was we were actually recording Coming Home, and we were in that Morning View studio. The morning, like where Les and Jake recorded, and Incubus recorded, their famous records at the Morning View studio. So we were like in this house, 24/7 recording songs for the next New Found Glory record. And I think at some point we all got kind of stir crazy. So we were just kind of sit there and people and like different people would get on different instruments and pick up the, and just start jamming these fast hardcore songs, fast punk songs. And obviously one of the, people in the band used to sing for a hardcore band. So it just made sense that we just like would have fun and kind of do this. And it was more like it started as a joke and just like a release for us in the studio. And then it kind of like turned into this also something that, it turned into an actual band that was fun for a while. But, this, again, it just started as something that was just like a joke that we were doing for fun. But yeah, that's it.
And it's pretty cool that it actually caught on as well, how like something you're just going stir crazy is kind of like a joke to you guys, but then it catches on and resonates with the fans, man. I think you guys released 2 records under those monikers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and what was cool too is like we were at, like sometimes when we couldn't find openers for like tours, we would open up for ourselves, like have 2 sets. So that was kind of interesting and fun, and people actually like knew the songs, and it was a really fast set because all the songs were like super short. So it's cool.
And it definitely works, man. I mean, at the end of the day, especially the new fans that aren't very familiar with the history of New Found Glory, they might be like, oh, these guys are cool. Then obviously there's like the hardcore fans being like, dude, like you do comprehend they're the same freaking people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was more to be, very like, it was more to start off to just be satire. And I hope that's what it kind of comes off as, is that those songs are not serious at all.
And the last New Found Glory song I actually have before we actually move on is New Found Glory is actually known as the godfather of pop punk, and on top of that, your self-titled second studio album was officially inducted into the Rock Sound Hall of Fame in 2012. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about that Hall of Fame induction, and of course, how does it feel to know that you are actually influenced and sparked an entire subgenre of music?
I didn't even know that about the rock sound thing. That's cool. Good to know. It's cool that I was in a band that made a dent and did something. I mean, for me, like I loved this style of music growing up, and I just went to local shows, and I picked up a guitar and started writing songs. I never really had any expectations of doing anything besides playing locally in my hometown. So like everything that I was able to do with my career was kind of like, I felt very lucky, and I never took it for granted. And, like, I feel like everything was icing on the cake. Because to me, like I said, I never had expectations. So like when things would happen, like we'd be on TRL or we get these like tours with Blink and Green Day, it was kind of like, oh my God, this is kind of crazy that something that started off so small as just something that we were doing for fun became something like a career and became something that, people actually cared about and like carried a legacy for the band, you know.
And also, as well, in 2011, you were actually the sole producer for Man Overboard's second studio album. I was wondering what actually inspired you to actually get into the producing aspect of the music industry, and of course, what was it like just working alongside Overboard for this particular project?
I've always been like super into the whole behind the scenes recording aspect of it. Like since the beginning of Newfound Glory, I was always in the studio, always super just into that whole process, leading into working with Neil Avron and then going into the mixing sections with like Tom Lord Alge, and just kind of just watching, just kind of soaking it all in, because it's kind of like it's stuff that you can't really, learn in schools. And I feel like I always had a passion of kind of like songwriting and working with other bands and working with people and being creative. So it kind of only was like a natural thing for me, because of what I did in Newfound Glory, how much I contributed to the writing, to kind of like, try to give that and help that with other bands. So, Zach was, from Men Overboard, became a really good friend of mine. And like, we got involved super early on helping them like create, when they were like working on their next full length after Real Talk. So it's kind of like interesting if you like look at the projection of the band from their first record to like Heart Attack, and kind of see how much they've grown in between those records. It's cool for me to see that, like how much, I was able to help them and help all the other bands that I was like producing,
And I have to ask, was it actually a difficult transition actually going from, a guitarist actually, working the mixing boards and everything? Because obviously two completely different instruments. I know you said you were in the studio all the time with Newfound Glory and you got to observe everything, but actually doing it, was a difficult transition for you at first, or did everything just come naturally?
For me, like I never really actually was ever behind the board. It was kind of like whenever I would produce records, like I would have like engineers that I would work with. But for the past like 10 years or so, I taught myself how to engineer, and all the records that I've been doing since then, I've been recording myself. So I kind of taught myself. After I left Newfound Glory, I just like started doing my own demos and started playing those for people, and people would be like, "Oh my God, you should be recording and doing this for these bands." And I never really thought it would actually, take, what I'm saying? Like I never thought I would actually be professionally producing bands, but I think I worked really hard at it to every time I did it to get better, even though I taught myself. So if you listen to like Imbalance or Neverland or Zach from Man Overboard side project, Zachary Ross and the Divine, and I've just been doing a lot of stuff and producing, and every record you can see since I started gets gradually better and better. So I'm always working on it.
And also, as well, a few years after Man Overboard, on April 8th of 2013, at Panda Studios in Fairmont, California, you were actually the producer for the State Champs' debut studio album, The Finer Things. I was wondering if you can tell us a bit more about that opportunity, and of course, what was it like working and just producing the very first album for State Champs? Because they actually grew into one of the biggest pop punk bands actually today in this current generation.
Yeah, State Champs are really good dudes. I love the band. I love like when they first came out with their first couple of songs, they were a band to watch. They heard the record that I did for The Story So Far, the What You Don't See record, and they wanted to work with the production team that did that record, which was very cool. Yeah, it was really cool to work with them because they were very green. This is their first time doing their full length, so kind of like working with them on pre-production and kind of going through the songs and kind of getting them where they should be was a lot of fun for me. And I'm proud of that record. And I hope they are too.
And it's also like I mentioned, it's cool to actually see them progress as well, man. Because I think they're going on like not stadium but arena-wide tours. They're going all over the country. I mean, like they've really grown since that album. And the one thing I love about them as well, their sound hasn't really changed either. That's always been pop punk all the way through and through.
Yeah, they're pop punk fans. They grew up on the music, so I don't think they're going to stray too far from that. Even though they're probably going to experiment and get more mature and grow up and write different songs and stuff like that. But I feel like they'll always have that core pop punk element.
And also in the year 2003, so this year, obviously, you founded and created the fastly growing record label titled Happy Haunting Records, where you actually discovered your first band by the name of Imbalance. I was wondering what actually made you decide to launch this label, and of course, how did you actually discover this amazing band as well?
I mean, Chris, the guitar player, would write me on Instagram a bunch and kind of like talk about working with me. And he loved the Neverland Beauty Sleep record that I worked on, and a couple other records, and obviously all my New Found Glory stuff that I did. So we started writing demos together. Like, he really didn't have a band. He just was kind of like him and like a drummer and then maybe a singer. And then we kind of like wrote a couple demos, and then he met this guy Marcel, and then he sent those demos to Marcel, and then Marcel wrote vocals over those songs. And I heard them, and I was like, this is insane. Like, this sounds so good. Like, this guy's, for not ever like, being a band and kind of like these first original songs, I was like super stoked on him. So I got him in the studio, we recorded the songs, and I was super proud of them. And I never really thought that I would actually start a label. That wasn't something, that I was like, oh my God, this is something that I'm planning on doing. But I believed in the band so much that, it was kind of like, all right, well, let's just kind of do this together. I have all these ideas. Like, we did, my friend Casey Weber did the music videos, and I kind of just helped them kind of create the band, kind of start the band, which is really cool. Like, and being involved in that, like, obviously, like, now they have Marcel, and they have Zeke and Anthony and Alex. So they have like a whole core band now. They're playing tons of shows in California and kind of growing. So it's cool to like be a part of that from the very beginning, even before they were, a band, and now seeing them play, like, they're like up to their 6th show, and like they have all these fans around the world that are really digging the record. So it's really cool. It's been a really cool experience.
And I remember when we actually were speaking and just coordinating and setting this interview up, and you sent me the links to Imbalance as well. And I got to say, it absolutely blew my freaking mind, man. Like, these guys are legit, probably the best, newest pop punk band that I actually heard recently. And I own a station. I get so many requests, but when I clicked that Spotify link, I was like, damn, dude, like, these guys are killer. I have to spin this on my station.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that's exactly why. Like, I was like, I need this band to be my first band that I signed on my label, and they're like good friends of mine. So it all just kind of just worked out really well, and we're excited for the future and to keep growing and keep putting out good music. And what's cool about them is like they're hardcore kids playing pop punk. They also like pop punk. They like hardcore, so they can be put on like any kind of shows. Just like I feel like that was one of the cool things about New Found Glory is like New Found Glory could be on any type of show and wouldn't feel weird. Like, it kind of what they fit in. So I think that's also one of the things that I also respect about Imbalance is like they can play a hardcore show, a pop punk show, a metal show, whatever, and they're going to kill it too. So it's good to see that.
And I have to ask, Steve, what is next for yourself? Because obviously we spoke about Imbalance, we spoke about your brand new record label, but is there anything I happen to miss during this evening's interview, like anything else you do still want to talk about, touch on, or promote? Well, we still got you here live on the radio station airwaves this evening.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely producing records. Like, I'm open, like, for bands if they want to DM me and talk about producing, mixing, songwriting with them. Growing Happy Haunting, I'm definitely talking to a bunch of other bands about signing to the label and expanding that for the future in 2024. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm just kind of focused on putting out good sounding music, and then releasing really cool music on my label that I'm really excited about.
And I definitely encourage individuals that are watching, if you are an artist and you need help with songwriting, definitely hit up Steve, because I know some people know this, but a lot of people might not know that you actually did a lot of the writing in New Found Glory. So a lot of those hits were written by, Steve Klein. So at the end of the day, like,
the lyrics and the melodies. Yeah.
So right then and there, if you want a hit, you know who to go to Steve.
Who's the doctor that told you to go see?
But I gotta ask to Steve quickly before we actually part ways, man. Like, obviously, I know how to follow you on social media. That's how we got connected. But for the individuals that aren't social media savvy, that don't really know how to navigate very well, how do they actually follow you on social media? And of course, your brand new record label as well. That way, they can stay updated on everything.
So my Instagram is at Steve is the Reason, and the record label is at Happy Haunting Records. Pretty simple. So at Steve is the Reason, at Happy Haunting Records, and yeah, a lot of stuff coming up in the future I'm really excited about. So follow, and yeah, excited about it.
And I got to say, first and foremost, Steve, thank you so much, man, for giving not only myself, but the radio station airways a bit of your time, man. I've been a huge fan of your Newfound Glory days, your production, everything, your entire career, man. So just the fact that I got to chop it up with you, I'm not gonna lie. The interviewer is like really thankful, but the kid inside of me is like, yeah. So thank you so much, Steve, for actually just giving me a bit of your time here this evening.
No worries. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, you're most certainly welcome, Steve. Definitely have yourself a phenomenal Wednesday night.
You too.